these dreams will end. Think I've had enough of the real world. These worlds will blend in slow motion. Daydreaming, I'm a daydreamer. Daydreaming of this woman, I can't seem to sleep enough. Lucidly floating through life with her.
To do. You've got so much ahead of you.
Don't talk like that.
It's true. I'm not gonna have nice things, fancy things. It doesn't. It's never gonna happen for me. It's not in the cards for me. saying we'll see how it goes later on.
Are you breathing
Alright, Sam, it's gonna work.
Please don't do this. You don't mean it.
Our affiliated network is a multiracial, multi-ethnic, and multicultural community of advocates, activists, and organizers committed to building people power to transform the lives of our communities, especially those who experience oppression. We believe that centering the leadership, experiences, voice, and votes, Indigenous people of color, BIPOC, women, low-income, and young people is a path to power and a thriving democracy. We are pro-TLGBQIA+, pro-immigrant justice, and pro-disability justice. We center the needs of currently and formerly incarcerated people, low-income, underemployed, and working-class people across the country in cities, suburbs, and rural communities. And we believe that a healthy democracy is one in which everyone is engaged, represented, listened to, and supported regardless of race, gender, immigration status, sexuality, ability, religion, or class. We are committed to challenging ourselves and the institutions around us to ensure no one is left behind in our fight for a better world. No one said freedom would be easy, but when people are oppressed, the work must be done. Oppressed people are crying out and still being unheard. Do you hear them? Join us and lend your voice to a new, most beautiful noise. Listen closely. Listen with love. These are voices for power. We're crafting a new anthem, and we will be heard. We're using our voices for power.
Hey everyone, happy Monday. Welcome to Voices for Power, Episode 2, The Power of Protecting Our Vote. My name is Alexis Anderson-Reed, she, hers, and I'm the Executive Director and CEO of State Voices. You can follow State Voices on Facebook as well as on Twitter and on our new website, voicesforpower.statevoices.org. I hope all y'all were able to join us last week, Friday, where we held a powerful, people-powered virtual rally. It was amazing. It was so much fun. It was impactful. It was emotional. And it was just such an amazing opportunity for us to celebrate all of the organizations working across this country who are grinding every single day to make sure people have what they need to vote on Election Day. We were also able to provide voters and folks in the community with more information they need in order to make a plan to vote. If you didn't get a chance to check it out, you can go into our Facebook or our Twitter and it will be posted there. So in today's episode, we're going to delve into the 100th anniversary of the passage of the 19th Amendment and talk about how voter suppression impacts trans, Latinx, Black, and other BIPOC communities. We have some great panelists who I'll introduce shortly who are going to discuss the power it takes to protect the vote of the Americas of we the people. We'll also be lifting up some important reminders to make sure everyone is registered to vote and has what they need to be vote ready. Actually today, so October 5th, today, there's a voter registration deadline for a number of states. And the voter registration deadlines are quickly approaching for so many other states in the coming days and weeks. For today, the voter registration deadlines are for the following states: Arizona, Florida, Georgia, Hawaii, Indiana, Kentucky, Louisiana, Montana, Mississippi, Ohio, South Carolina, Tennessee, Texas, and Utah. So if you live in one of these states and are tuning in, please make sure that you're registered to vote. If you know of folks in these states, please reach out to your family, to your friends, to any community that you have there to make sure they're registered to vote, as today is the voter registration deadline. And you can find out more about your voter registration deadlines in states at vote.org, or you can go to the website I provided earlier, voicesforpower.statevoices.org, and actually register to vote. And we'll have in a couple of minutes after this segment, if we talk to our first couple of guests, you'll be able to hear more about making a plan to vote. So we have some great guests today, many of whom I have the huge pleasure to get to work with every day, and I learn so much from. We have Kinsey Mabon with the Nebraska Civic Engagement Table, and Kinsey actually co-hosted our virtual vote rally on Friday. We have Tamika Atkins, the brilliant executive director of Pro Georgia, and she also serves on the State Voices Board of Directors. We have Emmett Schelling with Trans Texas. This will be my first time getting to meet Emmett, so I know we're going to be in for some great conversation. And we have Oriana Sandoval, who's the co-executive director of the Center for Civic Policy, New Mexico Civic Engagement Table. And Oriana was part of our host committee for a big convening we held in New Mexico last fall. But before we dig in with our first couple of guests, I want y'all to watch this quick video about what we have built at State Voices so far.
Our network fights every day to yield political power for all oppressed people, including Black people, Indigenous people, Asian Pacific Islanders, Latinx people, and our allies to build a healthy democracy. Our affiliated network is committed to building people power that transforms our democracy to create a free and just society for all. Our power is rooted in our commitment to centering the experiences of all oppressed people as the winning path to well-resourced and thriving communities. Together, we will organize on the ground to build capacity, leverage data infrastructure, and incubate innovative people-powered campaigns that support communities, win at the ballot box, and transform our state houses. We will leverage the unity of our structure to actualize our vision for a more just and equitable country where everyone can thrive and live in their full dignity. We're crafting a new anthem, and we will be heard. We're using our voices for power.
So as we talk about our power, right, and the power it's going to take to make sure that we are all vote ready in the 29 days we have until Election Day and continue to build our power beyond, right, into 2021 and beyond. We're going to spend some time today talking about what that power means in context of this year being the 100th anniversary of the passage of the 19th Amendment, which guaranteed which, I should say sought to guarantee, right, and protect women's constitutional right to vote. This historic centennial year brings about the awareness to know that the 19th Amendment, however, did not offer justice for all. So we're going to be reviewing and discussing the history of the 19th Amendment and the challenges of being able to vote today. So the 19th Amendment reads, the right of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of sex. In an article written by Martha Jones entitled, For Black Women, the 19th Amendment did not end their fight to vote, she states, the 19th Amendment did not, however, guarantee any woman the right to vote. Instead, reserving the ballot for men became unconstitutional. Women would still have to navigate a maze of state laws based upon age, citizenship, residency, mental competence, and so much more that might keep them from actually being able to vote. And she's correct. The amendment mentioned sex, but did not cover the basis for race and being a preventative measure. So actually, race didn't even get addressed until the Voting Rights Act of 1964. So the Voting Rights Act reads in Section 2, no voting qualification or prerequisite to voting or standard practice or procedure shall be imposed or applied by any state or political subdivision to deny or abridge the right of any citizen of the United States to vote on account of race or color. So with me now, we have our first couple of guests where we're going to delve into this topic further. And so I'd like to introduce Oriana Sandoval with New Mexico and Tamika Atkins with Pro Georgia. Thank y'all so much for joining today. How are y'all doing on this Monday?
Doing great, Alexis. Thanks for having us. It's great to be back with you and State Voices Network and Tamika, even if it's virtually. It's great to be in the fight with you all, always.
Absolutely. It's great to see y'all. Y'all always bring me so much joy when I get to see your faces.
Yes, joy. So important. So I know that I'm going to kick us off and hopefully we can just have an organic conversation. And I want to first ask the both of you, as you just heard and have, and about so many of both the promises and promises not fulfilled, right, of the 19th Amendment. How do we see those playing out and impacting the voters in 2020?
So that's a good question. I think taking it not just to voters, but that the 19th Amendment secured the right to vote not for all women, right, but really only for white women. And we think about some of these disparities now. So, we've all mourned, and rightly so, the loss of Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And without RBG, women would not be able to have credit cards in their own names, mortgages in their own names. She advanced the rights for women in this country. And we also know that white women are more likely, a single woman, to get a loan for a mortgage with affordable rates than a two-person household that is African-American or, from a community of color. And so just the disparity in terms of the advancements, that they don't always impact, right, Black and brown folks in the way that we would like them to. And so when we think about voting and access to voting, we may not have, counting jelly beans in a jar anymore or having to recite from memory pieces of the Constitution, but we do have, now that we don't have Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act, we do now have closing without notice polling locations, right? And, we are supposed to believe that it's a coincidence that polling locations are closed in majority people of color community. And then we see different stories in mostly white parts of Georgia and Atlanta where they are in and out and voting was easy, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and our folks are online from 7 a.m. until 1 or 2 p.m. in the afternoon, easy.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and Alexis, I'd also like to highlight the 19th Amendment. Yes, it's 100 years for some women who have had the right to vote. Here in New Mexico, our Native American community has had even less than 100 years access to voting rights. So it wasn't until 1948 when a World War II vet, Manuel Trujillo, came back to New Mexico and was denied the right to vote because of a provision in our state constitution that he sued our state government to actually have access for our Indigenous and Native American communities to be able to exercise that right as well. Our First Nations were denied basic access into our democracy, a few years, a generation past when women were granted that right too. So, this is within a couple generations that a lot of our communities have barely accessed basic access to our democratic institutions. So this is, it's an important responsibility. And, our ancestors and our grandparents fought for that right, for us to be able to have access to this. So let's not forget that these rights were just recently won for many of our communities.
Yeah, thank y'all so much for lifting up those stories. And I think it's so important that we are reflecting on where we've been to understand the moment that we're in and where we're going. And I think Oriana lifting up that, these are our grandparents, right, who fought for this right to vote in Black and Indigenous and communities of color across this country and Black and Indigenous women, right? And so we today are really standing on the shoulders of our ancestors and of our grandparents and all the elders in our families. And so just a huge appreciation to them and an opportunity to talk with them, right, about that legacy and that history. And then what we can do right now to make sure that generations forward, right, are continuing that fight, and they have to do less because we're here today. Mm-hmm. So Tamika, I'm going to come to you. I want to ask you a question about how we make sure that Black women are still engaged in 2020 in this election, when so often they are seen as just relied upon that their vote, they're always going to vote. I mean, 2016, 2018, and elections before that, we see, a huge turnout of Black women and what that means in our democracy and also what that doesn't mean. And so as you think about 2020, what messages should we be using to engage Black women in 2020 and to make sure that that type of turnout continues to happen? But what would you also say if Black women are well, we're actually not being reflected right? Even though we're voting at some of the highest rates compared to any other demographic?
That is an interesting question. I might have conflicting answers. So, one is that, yes, that African-American women vote most consistently across all demographics year after year, not just for presidential, but also for state and for local. And, this takes us back to some like deep work that has to be done. Black women are often seen as caretakers for our families, for our communities, for our neighborhoods, and by extension for our country. And, we have been positioned, we have been trained, we have been, set up to think that our backs are broad, right? And that we can hold all of this. So I say all that to say is that I don't anticipate Black women not voting this year in record droves as we've been voting. That's going to continue because we still hold that caretaker mentality and responsibility that we have to make sure we save our democracy. We have to be the ones that bring out our family members to vote. We are the ones who are usually organizing our elders, our youth, and our neighbors to go out and vote, right? That's just a part that has become part and parcel about what it means for Black women to participate in our democracy, to carry a lot of that work. But conversely, when it comes to our priorities, our issues, our needs, things like our infant mortality rate, things like, access to healthcare, access to livable wages, to affordable housing, I can go on and on. Our needs are not reflected in the conversations that are happening at national, state, and local level. And a part of that is because we have become a dependable voting base, right? So that means that work doesn't necessarily have to be done to engage us. And again, because oftentimes the needs of Black women are not centered. And so it becomes just, that's what we are accustomed to. And what I have seen in 2020, what I've frankly seen since 2016 is that moving forward, Black women said nothing about us without us. So when we look at, Alabama in 2017, a surge of Black women and Black voters turning out in the 2017 election, that was work that had been built nearly a decade before by local organizers and community activists in that community for this record surge that we see in 2017. We see in 2018, record amount of African Americans voting in our 2018 gubernatorial race. And now we're moving forward to 2020. And Pro Georgia and our partners, we said, we want to build a vision for women of color where we can thrive in Georgia that is built by us and not by anyone else. If we are not going to be included in someone else's agenda, we're going to make our own. And so we have our agenda. We have our survey with our priorities on our website, www.womenofcolorinitiative.org, where you can go and see the top issues that matter to women of color in Georgia. And we want to see all elected officials talking about our priorities and building policy that reflects our needs.
Yes, I was over here snapping. I didn't have my sound on, so I don't think y'all can hear my snap. But thank you so much, Tamika, and just grounding us in the power of Black women, that our democracy has been founded on Black women, and that we have to make sure that if we are building it, it's actually going to be for us. And we saw in this year like Black Women For, and just so many great organizations, and not even organizations, just like Black women in the community saying that we must be reflected in the vision and the issues that are impacting our lives. So thank y'all. Thank y'all so much for your work, everything you're doing in Georgia, and for all the Black women who are doing amazing work across this country. Trust Black women. So, Oriana, I'm coming over to you. So what would you say are the most relevant issues impacting BIPOC turnout in your state of New Mexico? And then you were a part of helping to build, along with Tamika, about our full network, our new vision, right? and our new strategic direction. So how have you used that new State Voices vision to propel, and protect the BIPOC vote in New Mexico?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks, Alexis. We're really excited about the State Voices new vision and mission, and just the incredible work that's gone, to make sure that all of the states have had impact and feedback and bought into this new vision, so that it's really reflecting our theory of change and how we're going to achieve transformative change over the next few generations. Here in New Mexico, as well as all the other State Voices states, I think it's making sure, reinforcing that message that democracy isn't a one-day event, right? It doesn't happen one day every 4 years, one day every 2 years. Voting is important. Showing up on election day or voting early is important. And that's a big piece of the democratic process, but it's every day that we need to be holding our elected officials accountable to our agenda and to our priorities. So election day is just the beginning. Then the next day, that's when we start building relationships, making sure that we get in front of our elected officials so that they understand what our needs are for our communities, and hold them accountable to that, right? We hold them accountable through voting, but there's many ways to hold them accountable. So one thing that we do here in New Mexico with the help of all of our partners, as well as we know all the other State Voices networks as well, is year-round issue education. So making sure that our communities know the issues that are important to them are uplifted in the mainstream issue environment, and that elected officials are aware of it and they're held accountable to that. So that happens year round. That is not just, once a day every 4 years in November. And again, like our elected officials and the decisions that affect our lives are from the school board and county and city level all the way up to the federal level and presidency. And so I think that's a big part of the mission and vision that State Voices is really helping us all to advance, is to understand that democracy is hard work and it's year round, but that we do have the power within our communities to affect change and to change how democracy is working and what it looks like.
Thank you so much, Oriana, and thank you for lifting up that this is hard work, but it's needed every single day, year in and year out. And I think that's one of the things that I am most proud of as we were creating this new vision together, is situating civic engagement and redefining civic engagement centered in building power, right? And so it means, yes, the traditional civic engagement that people think of, like, registering to vote and voting on election day, which is extremely important. But that's not the beginning or the end, right? And Alicia Garza always says, and I always quote her on this, that voting is an important litmus test of our organizing and what we can build moving forward. But it's not going to lead us right to building power or deliberation for BIPOC communities and for Black folks. And so we're investing, and because this election is so important, but we're going to be ready the day after the election and going into 2021 to do all those things, Oriana, that you listed up, with holding our elected officials accountable, organizing on the issues that are impacting our communities, and making sure that folks have a voice and are engaged year round. So we're at the end of our time. That went really quickly. And I just want to thank both of you. Thanks so much to Mika. Thanks, Oriana, for just taking the time out of your busy days. I know y'all are crazy busy with 29 days until the election. Y'all are doing big things. And so thank y'all so much, and for joining us today. And so for folks out there, if you're interested in learning more about Tamika and Oriana's work, you can go to voicesforpower.statevoices.org. And we have a network section, so you can click there and learn both about Pro Georgia and the New Mexico table, as well as about all the tables in the State Voices network. So we've got more show ahead, but we want to take a quick break to remind everyone how you can register to vote and how you can make a plan to vote. So I'm going to be bringing on our Deputy Director of State Capacity Building with State Voices, Kayla Rivera, as well as the Senior Director of State Capacity Building, Stephen Montoya. So I'll turn it over to them. Thank y'all.
With 29 days away from the election, With 29 days away from the election and us transmuting the powerful energy from State Voices virtual rally that was held this past Friday, we have set forth on our call to action to help our communities make a people-powered vote plan to make sure that you, your family, and friends are ready to vote.
Step 1 in this plan is ensuring that eligible voters are registered to vote. It's important to know your state deadlines because the dates do vary by state. Some voter registration deadlines are coming up as fast as today, 5th of October. So if you're not registered to vote, please go to the bit.ly link that you can see here, bit.ly.sv register to vote. And if you are registered, make sure you ask at least 3 people if they are vote ready.
We need you to make a plan to vote. There are a few ways to make sure your vote is counted. You can vote by mail, and in some states you have to request that. You can vote early, which also varies by state, and you can vote on election day, which is November 3rd. To find out what's on your ballot and your voting options, please visit voicesforpower.statevoices.org/vote by mail.
All right, and finally, we want to help you protect your voting rights. You can check your registration now, as well as get guidance on what to bring. Some states do require an ID, and there might also be additional requirements to consider. If you have a problem on election day, call 1-866-OUR-VOTE, the voter protection hotline, or visit the link here, 866ourvote.org. I've been Stephen Montoya, Senior Director of State Capacity Building, with Kayla Rivera, our Deputy Director of State Capacity Building. Thank you all so very much. I'll turn it back over to our fabulous Chief, Alexis.
All right. Thank you so much, Stephen and Kayla. As they mentioned, and I mentioned earlier, there's a number of states whose voter registration deadline is today, October 5th. So please make sure you visit our website, voicesforpower.statevoices.org, register to vote, and also you can visit vote.org to learn more about your registration deadline. So huge shout out and huge thank you to Kayla and Stephen for that important information on both what you need to vote as well as what you need to make a plan to vote and knowing your voting rights. So we're going to move to our next segment for the day. And I'm really excited to be talking with our next speakers. But I'm first going to kind of give some background around what we're going to be digging into in this segment. So as we know, Black, Latinx, and trans folks face a tremendous amount of voter suppression. The Latinx community often faces structural barriers like onerous voter ID laws or long lines at voting places. Many immigrants or the children of immigrants have never voted or seen their parents vote. Also, the Black community experienced similar voting issues due to felony convictions, closure of government buildings, early closing of polling locations or limited polling locations, and the list goes on. And another community that has potential to be disenfranchised in this election cycle in 2020 is the transgender community due to photo ID or possibly due to other issues. So all of these communities experience voter suppression in one form or fashion. And to speak on these issues today, I have the pleasure of being joined by Emmett Schelling with Trans Texas, as well as Kinsey Mabon with the Nebraska Civic Engagement Table. So first, welcome Kinsey and Emmett. How are y'all doing on this Monday?
Hi, I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me.
Of course.
Thank you so much for having me too. Doing well, trying to enjoy as much of the sort of temperature fall here in Texas while it lasts. And I think we get it like a week of good weather and then it's just, who knows?
Yeah. No, I live right outside DC in Maryland, and I'm with you. Like, I love this time of year where I get to wear like a light sweater and just be outside in nature, and the leaves are starting to change before it gets like too cold. So yeah, we only have like a short period of time between it's either hot and humid or like really cold. So I'm going to enjoy it. And Emmett, so nice to meet you. and have this conversation with you. So I'm going to first kick off with a question to both of you. So Kinsey and Emmett, can you tell our audience, the folks who are tuning in today, about some of the voter suppression challenges that you have seen and that unfortunately you have faced in your work?
Yeah. So in Nebraska, for the last 8 years, we've luckily defeated voter ID laws as they've been brought up in our legislature. And that's one of the biggest challenges, is just trying to constantly educate people on that and getting them to talk to their senators, and defeating that year after year. But we also, over the last few years, have seen polling place closures and changes. It's because not always closures. It's like, oh, now it's down the street, and they don't necessarily let people know. And then we also have felon disenfranchisement. That's a huge part of our issues here in Nebraska. After 2 years of being off paper, people formally convicted of a felony can vote, but Black Nebraskans make up 5% of our population and over 50% of our prison population. So that's a very focused effort for disenfranchisement in the state of Nebraska.
Yeah, thank you so much, Kinsey. Same question for you, Emmett. Tell us a bit about the voter suppression challenges you've seen and you have faced in your work.
In Texas, I think it's pretty infamous for everything from systemic with the gerrymandering, redistricting, to, talking about where we're seeing our governor literally try to curtail the efforts of the county election clerks, who are really put in place to ensure that polling locations are available regardless of partisanship, for people to cast their votes in a way that they can leave from work, leave from school, that it should be exactly how it is described, that voting should be a right that is easily engaged and easily participated in, and be able to get and resume about your day as needed. And, here in Harris County, where Houston is the biggest major city, we saw our elections clerk, Chris Hollins, just do, incredible things. And he took over halfway, through the tenure of Diane Troutman, who unfortunately had to leave due to health complications, and came in and really said, okay, we're going to do this. Got the, where the Rockets play, Toyota Center, to all these different locations. And then not to mention that, Texas is looked at as one of the strictest voter ID laws in the country. So when you see layer upon layer upon layer from the state and to the local, and, it is, I think, an alarming time for people to really understand what is within the rights and what is not, for even their elected officials at this point, and call them to accountability, because this should never have been a partisan issue, if we're being quite blunt. It should have been just an issue that we all deeply care about, because it maintains the integrity of the system that we rely upon to be able to make our voices heard.
Yeah, thank you, Kinsey and Emmett. I think y'all both lift up, really important points, and also the fact that here, you all live in Nebraska and Texas, and people always ask about why racial justice and gender justice is important in, predominantly white states and sometimes predominantly conservative states. And this is exactly why, right? And so when we say Black Lives Matter, trans lives matter, all Black Lives Matter, this is what we're talking about. The fact that in order for all of us to thrive, right, in order for all of us to live in our full dignity, we have to focus on those who are most oppressed and those who are most disenfranchised. And so, that's a devastating statistic that you listed up, Kinsey, that Nebraska has 5% of their population as Black folks, with 50% who are incarcerated. We should all be angry and making sure that our anger is being turned into action. So thank y'all so much. Kinsey, I'm going to come to you with a question. So in 2016, we saw that 4 million voters did not vote, and that a record number of Black women voted. We talked about a bit of this with Tamika on the first segment. So given the severity of our current state of the country with the pandemic, with the economic downturn, what is the motivational key, would you say, to get the swing voters who didn't vote out to the polls while also maintaining the swell of Black women as voters?
Well, I think we can accomplish both of those things in much the same way. We need to be pushing, like supporting pro-Black policies, pro-women policies. And then when we talk about getting swing voters or people who didn't vote out, in Nebraska especially, we have a huge issue with misinformation. There's like really focused misinformation campaigns, especially when we talk about our like non-city folk, not necessarily rural, but sometimes rural. And, you know, we are increasing in population of BIPOC representation in rural areas. I am not from a city originally, and there was no information. I didn't know, honestly, until I started doing this work, I didn't really know what my elected officials did. So a lot of our partners are doing that work to educate people on what do these elected officials actually do? How does it affect your life? And then the other side of that is like educating people on like the policies that affect things that are going on in your communities, things that go on in your families. So honestly, just having those conversations and educating people on not just policies, but also how to vote is really important. There are tons of people who don't know that they can register to vote 2 years after being off paper. There are people who don't know that they can register to vote if they're going to be 18 before the election. So, you know, we have lots of information that we need to be getting out to people. And the more that we sort of focus on the actual community building piece of getting to know your neighbors and being a part of the community, which I think is one of the most important parts of, it is the most important part of civic engagement. Once we get people to say, hey, I know who my neighbors are. I care about who my neighbors are. I care, your issues are my issues. I'm here for you. The more we do that, the more we can convince people to do their part by voting.
Thank you, Kinsey. Thanks for lifting up. I mean, that's something that excites me about civic engagement and organizing is like the deep, authentic relationships, right? It's about community. And I think that one, because of the hyper-partisan world that we live in, and then unfortunately, you know, due to coronavirus, people are feeling disconnected. And so I think like bringing it back to how you could be connecting with your neighbors in a safe way, how you can be, you know, reaching out to your family, your friends, and just kind of building the support in the neighborhood that you live in is so, so important, and building that trust together. So Emma, I have a question for you. So in traditional party politics, we unfortunately don't see a lot of focus on getting out the vote in trans and in gender nonconforming communities. And the barriers to voting are great. Our trans siblings experience more homelessness, more criminalization, and more economic instability. So with 29 days, right, left till election day on November 3rd, what would you say we could do right now to make sure that trans and gender non-conforming folks are able to cast their ballot on November 3rd?
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit on a really great thing in terms of recognizing, right, when you have issues that are naturally in place for a population of people, a voting bloc, so to speak, it would seem to be a logical thing, I think, to really connect people to like what their issues are in their lives. Unfortunately, we don't see that. I think also in Texas, we see that overlooked overall with LGBTQ issues. Like here in the state, there are a myriad of reasons why just somebody in their life would be compelled to want to engage in voting in terms of like they want to see their quality of life increase just like anybody else. And they want to know who the candidates are that are gonna be committed to that and follow through. When we look at then what does it look like for a trans person to vote, with one thing said, trans led orgs get 3 cents to every $100 that go into LGBTQ work. So when you're seeing the larger groups that are cis LGBT run, and you're thinking about, wow, like they're doing all this like voting work, they're doing a lot of GOTV work, and largely we know that we're seeing it get better. But let's be honest, like up until recently, like trans people were largely left out of those like cis-led LGBT organizations like efforts, even like I think within the understanding on a very basic human level who we are and what our issues are that we deal with in life, what are the obstacles that are built in because of who we are, not necessarily who we love, even though like that intersection is one that is held by a lot of trans folks that go into queer, lesbian, gay, in sexual orientation. But then, realizing that you're already starting with that disadvantage to boot when you're looking at the organizations that are able to that are really looking at the trans community, really looking at non-binary people, seeing we understand this is how it works. And even though, our voting ID law says that your presentation on your ID does not have to be the presentation that you're standing in front of that worker as you're getting ready to go cast your ballot. But at the same time, we know that is not how it happens. And so all of the things that are codified into law that are already being looked at as these are strict, these are prohibitive, like XYZ, looking in Ohio, how they purged their voting records simply based on voters that didn't respond when they moved and they were sent mail, and we know housing insecurity. So are we in a sense, by these movements, we're saying people who are unhoused actually don't deserve the same right that we try to tell everybody that if you are a citizen in this country and the state, that you have a right to exercise that vote. And so then looking at the actual interaction, are your poll workers actually informed that they know that trans people are going to come, non-binary people are going to come? Do they understand that even though the law says this, they understand that these are the things that folks are going to experience of this is who I am, and we've heard time and time again where uneducated poll worker is yelling to another poll worker, this ID says that so-and-so, this man is da-da-da, but he's wearing a dress, and you think about it too, right? Of the work that Tent does, we do in a trauma-informed harm reduction kind of way. And so one of the things, even with other organizations that are doing voting rights, because that's not our primary thing, but obviously because we're in Texas, because the work we do, it falls into we have to make sure that other organizations are also aware. And so when we're sending out our voting while trans information, they, even though this is not the letter of the law that cis people have to follow, to reject it and say it's wrong when we know as trans people, if I go to the DMV, I need 5 sets of identification, not 2. I need every single official document that says exactly who I am. Being an immigrant, I need more documentation to make sure they also know, my status. And you combine just those two, and I am somebody that is not in a situation where housing insecurity. So I am, struggling to provide a secure address where I can say, yes, I'll receive my ID at this address. And I know it will safely get to me. And so things like that, where we realize that what you see is not always what you get. And so what does this look like? In Harris County and other counties through the state of Texas, we were able to team up with their election boards or the clerk of elections office and do intensive training of what's this maybe look like? What do trans people really realistically face at the polls? How can you make sure that you're staying informed? And even if somebody else hasn't gone through the same training, maybe if you're seeing it happen, you can step in and say, wait, no, my understanding is this. So when it comes down to all of this, it's there's no surefire method, unfortunately. We're encouraging folks who have the ability, they have justification to do absentee ballots, that we're going to do those. But, also I think when it comes to that, there's a lot of question marks hanging in the air too, because you want to make sure that if people are taking the time to exercise their right to vote, that vote's really counted, that vote's really received. And so, it's temperamental time, but I think all in all, it takes everybody. I'm really encouraged to see, even in Texas, heroes like Chris Hollins step up to the plate and say, this is a lot, but you know what, we're going to do this and we're going to do it right, and give everything we can to make sure that as many people are getting out to vote. We see that in Travis County. We see really this rising of folks finally, I think, waking up, because Texas is known as a sort of non-voting, people say we're a red state. We're a non-voting state. And so if we can wake up those voters like that, and that's a scary thing, I think, when you're talking about this sort of partisan angle of the power.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. I mean, you just dropped a whole bunch of knowledge for folks out there. I learned something, and it makes me, one statistic that you lifted up was that is 3 cents for every dollar an LGBT, organizing goes to trans. Oh, and per 100?
Yeah, 3 cents for every dollars. So
wow, that's crazy.
Trans-led orgs, because we know our community and we know what needs to be done, and to have people go be poll workers. That's one of my biggest things. And they're like, what can we do? I'm like, go make some money. Be an election worker.
Be an election worker. And so, I mean, that just, is both devastating and also says that there's a lot of work to be done, a lot of education to be done, and that the progressive ecosystem, right, that we work in has to do a better job. We just have to do better. We have to be better for our trans siblings, and listen and learn. And so thank you so much. I know we only have about 5 minutes left. And so in maybe the next couple of minutes, I thought it would be great to hear one thing that you're excited about that you've seen, either that you want to lift up either from your work or an exciting initiative or campaign that you've seen to help get people out to vote. So again, either from your work or that you've seen from others.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if this is necessarily just our work, as a network here in Nebraska, but I do know that we are very rapidly approaching about 40% of the total people who voted in 2016 just in mail ballot requests, which is huge and amazing, and says to me that we're going to have record turnout, and just everybody switched on a dime, right before the primary. We all had to transfer to working from home, and, changing our programs and no longer knocking doors and all that sort of stuff. And people have just put in work to educate Nebraskans on the fact that we have no excuse for absentee ballot. So no matter what, I always vote by mail. That's always been a thing. I work elections, so, I've always had to, but that's just something that's huge and amazing that I've really been looking at and enjoying seeing, is just the growth in voters.
Awesome. Love that. Emmett, what about for you?
I mean, I just like shout out to young people. I got a 21-year-old child who informs me on the daily how, uh, the things I touch turn like irrelevant. That's what it is. So as I'm trying to figure out TikTok, they're like, no, please don't figure this out, right? But then finding out that like kids on TikTok are like sharing voting plans and like talking about like the necessity for like young people to come out and vote, talking about like, if we're being honest, they're talking about that they don't love the selection of candidates, but like they know that like their future hinges on like needing to get people in office that recognize what their needs are. Like all of these things. I think young people, every single time I go and talk to them, I'm reminded, I don't think my kid's in earshot, but like my kid's so much smarter than I was at that age, like so much more aware of like how their life impacted other people's lives, how like even if they didn't personally feel something of impact in their own life, that they could recognize where that issue was, having implications on their life, or like they could have positive implications back by, the intention that they were setting through in life, and understanding, I think at the end of the day, like how, important voting is, how important it is to be talking about things that honestly adults are like, we don't want to talk about that. Aunt Trudy's going to get upset. And like the like young people are like, we don't care. Like Aunt Trudy, like help this mess. So like we want to talk to Aunt Trudy. Like get on the phone, Aunt Trudy. And so really looking at that has been, I think, an incredibly bright spot of hope as we're in a very like temperamental and stressful time for everybody. I think that's doing any work within this, adjacent to us, realizing the importance of this year's election cycle, that people get out. But yeah, young people, like I hold on to that hope when I see them, that the kids are going to be all right.
Yes. Thank you so much for lifting that up. Like, young people are brilliant, they're fearless, and shout out to my daughter Olivia. She's 22, and she actually lives in Texas, so she's down there working. And but yeah, no, I feel you so much on that. So, well, thank y'all so much for joining today. I hope folks just got to learn so much from all the energy and brilliance you both bring. Emmett, really quickly in this last 30 seconds, and then Kinsey. So maybe each take like 10 seconds. Do you want to say where people can find you either on social media or your work?
Transgender Education Network of Texas on Facebook, Trans Texas on Twitter and Instagram. We're admittedly not real active on Twitter.
Thank you. Kinsey, what about for you?
Yeah, the Nebraska Civic Engagement Table. You can find us on Facebook and on Instagram. I do not think we have a Twitter.
Thank y'all so much.
Thank you.
So I want to thank all of our guests who joined us today. Kinsey Mabon, Emmett Shelley, Tamika Atkins, and Oriana Sandoval. We have 29 days until Election Day. I can't believe it. And folks have been working hard. They've been grinding every single day to make sure folks are vote ready. And we still have tons of work to do. So with Election Day just being a few weeks away, we have to buckle down and we have to ensure that we are registered to vote and have a plan to vote. And we need your help in doing this. You can find out more about voter registration deadlines and opportunities at www.vote.org. You can also go to our website, voicesforpower.statevoices.org, and you can register there and also find out how you can request your mail-in ballot. And so, and folks, feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions. Thank you all so much for tuning in to our second Facebook Live episode. Our next episode will take place 1 week from today, on Monday, October 12th, on Indigenous Peoples Day. And we're going to be unpacking the I in BIPOC. And so it's going to be a really, really meaningful and important episode, and also a celebration of our Indigenous people all across this country. So thank y'all so much for joining in today. And remember, this election is about our voices, and our voices have power. Thank you.
We are the national affiliation of state tables building political power with multiracial, multi-ethnic, and multicultural communities. We envision a reflective, responsive, and accountable democracy. We center and value advocates, activists, and organizers to transform the lives of our communities, especially those who experience oppression. We fight for a world where Black, Indigenous, people of color, women, and young people are free and able to live in their full dignity. In this world, our people have affordable housing, economic stability, and the resources they need to live. We dream of a world that is centered in joy and leads with love, where we are all represented and connected. We envision a nation of powerful state-based coalitions that transform the political landscape by anchoring racial and gender justice as a strategy to build power and win. We believe we can create this free and liberated world together. With friends and partners from across the country, the State Voices Network fights for those voices and communities. With our strategic direction, we're recommitting ourselves to supporting, funding, and amplifying on-the-ground organizers, leadership, and political power. This work ain't easy, but it's our life's work, and we're built for this. Organizers and advocates are strengthening communities, fighting injustice, and helping us all remember our most sacred humanity. We're crafting a new anthem, and we will be heard.
Catch up. I know you want to cry. I don't wanna walk away, wait till we fast up. Walking straight with our chest up. I know we'll be just fine. We was flying before your feelings flapped away. I'm hoping we can catch up. My baby girl used to be last now. They could wait their turn. This great, great world. You're my favorite girl. Used to be last now. They could wait their turn. We built this great, great world. Yeah. Okay, we fighting and we boast a lot. Used to work at Dairy Queen. Come home and then you talk a lot. Them clouds stay billowing, no need for all that Photoshop. Stay cool, stay cool. I know you used to wear those moccasins. Hands up in your pockets, got no pocket length, just like you feeling. Flying in the ostrich, no ceiling for those macaroons. Not even if they coconut chemicals, if they would come. Go ahead, stop the movie like we supposed to. Your man watch me eating up some tofu. Been a couple minutes since I seen you around the Whole Foods, yeah. Cause I don't shop at Whole Foods, but I could take your whole loot. Mobile from Florida is so too. If only then I could console you, no stick up. Considerably while I get my piano send a pickup. Caught you acting anything but fickle. And now you know you want to cry. I don't wanna walk away, wait till we fast up. Walking straight with our chest up. I know we'll be just fine. We was flying before your feelings flapped away. I'm hoping we can catch up. I know you want to cry. I don't wanna walk away, wait till we fast up. Walking straight with our chest up. I know we'll be just fine. We was flying before your feelings flapped away. I'm hoping we can catch up. My baby girl used to be last now. They could wait their turn. We built this great, great till we fast up, walking straight with our chest up. I know we'll be just fine.